Hi everyone, this is Aaron for Zollotech, and we're going to review the iPad 2 today. The iPad 2 has been out a couple weeks. I've used it continuously since then and wanted to give you my take on it. Let's first remove the smart cover, of which we'll talk about a little bit in a moment. The new additions to the iPad 2 versus the iPad 1 start with the processor. The processor went from an A4, roughly 1 gigahertz, or what Apple says is 1 gigahertz, to an A5 dual-core processor. The Apple never really said specifically what it's capable of. However, in some tests, people have found that it's between 800 and 900 megahertz per core. The other addition is 512 megabytes of RAM versus the 256 that it previously had. This adds a significant speed boost, as we'll talk about in a moment. Now with the iPad, you know what you're getting into if you've come from an iPad 1. It's basically the same thing. The other addition that they've added with this one is a front-facing camera, a rear-facing camera, which is under 1 megapixel, not very good for pictures, pretty good for video, but basically general use, mostly for something like FaceTime. The other design change that's obvious is the speaker. However, they have made it thinner and lighter, and by making it thinner and lighter, they've also made some changes to where the button places are. On here, there aren't any buttons. On the top, we have our 3.5 millimeter headphone jack. We have a microphone, our sleep-wake button. The problem is this is at an angle, where it used to be flush to the top. So when you want to go ahead and plug in your headphones, it actually is very difficult to figure out where it is unless you look. It's pretty minor, but it's coming from an iPad 1 to a 2. I liked that better on the iPad 1. Same for the sleep-wake, the volume rocker, and the anti-rotate switch or silent switch, depending on what you have it set for in the OS. The other annoying thing I find is with the dock connector on the bottom being at an angle, it's pretty difficult to get that in place compared with the previous version, which was on a flush surface. Couple interesting things to note, I thought. One of the other things they've added with this iPad, aside from the processing power, the thinness, and that sort of thing, is the color white to the bezel. You can now choose between white and black. Prices have stayed the same. They start at $499 in the US, go up an increment of 100 for 16 megabytes to 32 gigabytes of RAM to 64 gigabytes. And then if you want 3G, you add another $120, $130 to that. So it can get pretty pricey at the top of the line. They've also added some magnets along the side here where this clicks in nicely, and this is separate for about $40 unless you want to go to the leather cover, which then bumps you up to about $70. So pretty pricey for a smart cover, as Apple calls this. The smart cover has magnets built in that align it perfectly with the screen. It has a microfiber lining that actually keeps the screen quite clean and nice, and adheres to it via a magnet that actually will wake it when you open and put the display to sleep when you close it, as you can hear. You can take this off real easily, click it back in place. It auto aligns. It will not allow you to mount it this way. It does not work properly. When it's in place, you can also use this as a stand by rolling it up and propping it up this way. You can also prop it up vertically by doing that. When you want to put it to sleep, you just roll it to sleep, or take it off when you want to read a book, something like that. It actually works out pretty nice, but it is an accessory and not really part of the iPad itself, but it kind of is nice to have. Now, one of the other things, other than the actual physical changes and processor and that sort of thing, is the addition of photo booth. Now that we have the forward-facing camera, we can process all of these things at once due to the 9 times faster graphics. This really couldn't be handled very well, and what you're seeing overhead is the lights and things like that. This wouldn't really be handled very well on an iPad 1 due to the memory and processor speed. This really can handle the speed without slowing down. Let's go back out of here. And the other edition of the app that you can buy is iMovie. You can now record and edit movies, and it actually records and edits them very quickly, even in some tests as quick as an iMac with a Core i7 quad-core, which is crazy, but some people have done some comparisons and found this to render those videos faster. I haven't done that video or done that test myself, but maybe in the future we'll check that out. Now the real question is, now that there's not really any difference between what I've already mentioned and the old iPad, should you upgrade? Well, there's a couple things that are, it's tough to say. The buttons on the side that are slanted make that a no, should you upgrade. Also, if you wanted a more substantial feel, some people do. Even though this is lighter, some people feel it may break easier, although some tests on the screen have shown that's not the case. There's really, if you have an iPad 1, unless you have something specific you want to do with it, it's really difficult to say, yes, run out and upgrade. The speed is definitely noticeable with what you're doing as far as, well, with photo booth, but things such as magazines. If you go into a magazine such as, oh, I don't know, I don't really have any I can go into due to copyright. However, I have Auto Week here. Very big noticeable difference. There is really a giant speed difference. There's also a big difference when you're running video, when you're running things like YouTube. I've done a comparison video, so you may want to check that out between YouTube on this and an iPad, and also this and a Zoom, just to kind of give some comparisons. In the YouTube app, it's really very fast compared to the old one, and that's probably due to the memory more so than the processor, but I could be wrong on that. The other thing I've found is just general use. It does not seem to slow down. Here we have a bunch of applications running. Just as it builds up in memory, there's more memory for it to build up into. There's really not a whole lot more to go into other than to say that it's a nice iPad. It's basically the same thing, unless you want the cameras specifically or want to use GarageBand and use it for recording. You could definitely do that. It will work better on this than it would with an iPad 1, as this can handle more information more easily. I think unless you need the speed, you're not going to notice too much of a difference. When you go from, if you've never had an iPad, the iPad 1 is available pretty cheaply right now and is a good value. Let's click this back on here. And the iPad 1 is available fairly cheap, is a good value, and does the job. If you have never had an iPad 1, you won't notice the difference probably with an iPad 2. If you really want an iPad 2, you probably already have one and are in line or have one reserved, and you're just watching the video just because, and you maybe want some more information or something like that. Otherwise, it's a tough upgrade. It really is. I may suggest go to the next generation where maybe they have a Retina display. You know, for review purposes, I got one, and I watch a lot of videos and YouTube, so it does make a difference for that. But the camera is subpar. It's not for actually recording and taking good images. It's for FaceTime pretty much only, and occasionally recording maybe a family movie and editing it in iMovie. There's really not an advantage to the cameras. You're better off taking a video with your iPhone, importing it with the camera kit into your iPad, and editing it that way. You have a much better camera on the iPhone 4 than you do on here, so it's really not... You shouldn't go out and buy one just because of the camera if you want to take pictures. If you want to do FaceTime with it, that's why you want to get it. Other than that, I really don't see a whole lot of reasons to upgrade other than what I've already mentioned. If you have any questions, though, please feel free to ask. If you haven't subscribed, please go ahead and hit subscribe, comment, like. I always appreciate that. Thanks for watching. This is Aaron. I'll see you next time.